Hello everybody, it's your friend Daniel and welcome back to another video where we're going to be covering every single tip that the government has given you for your GCSEs and A-levels, including but not limited to what you need to know before your exams, how to deal with exam pressures, the rules of exams to make sure you don't get disqualified or lose marks, and most importantly, how to dispute your results when AQA inevitably messes up and gives you the wrong mark. As always, all the resources I use are in the description, and make sure to like and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump in. This is all the articles we're going to be looking today are from gov.uk, the official government website, and they're all relating to what you need to know for your exams. Now, this first one is guidance about what you need to know for your exams. And firstly, it starts off with just some regular stuff about your school or college enters you for the exams. If you're unsure about any aspects, you should speak to your school or college. Now, this is a bit of just a deflection tactic, but it is fair considering every college has different setups for exams, different exam rules about when you need to arrive and stuff, although all exams do officially start at 9 a.m. or 1:30 p.m., depending on whether it's an AM or PM exam. Next up, it's talking about what to do if you're a private candidate. This will not apply to the vast majority of people, as most people would be doing it either through a school or a college. However, if you are doing it, there are official lists of colleges and schools via JCQ that accept entrances for private candidates. Just what I was talking about. When are the exams? For the exam dates, they're all on the Joint Council for Qualifications website, or you can go to the official exam board website if you know what exam board you're sitting. And every exam timetable contains 2 contingency sessions on the afternoon of the 11th of June and all day on the 25th of June, where you must be available. These would be used in case like the exam had to be moved. This could either be due to it being leaked on the day, or more likely a national crisis or something. Once again, just general stuff that happens in case of worst case scenario that will most likely not affect you. For English language and maths, exams are also available in November, and these are primarily as resets. So you'll be able to reset your exams if you don't get the grade you want. Next up is just some things on vocational and technical skills qualifications and T-levels, which are alternatives to GCSE and A-levels and won't apply to pretty much any of the people who are watching this, so I'll just skip it. Next up is the exam timetable, talking about your college or school giving you individual timetables for exams. But however, it also warns you to check this carefully so you don't miss an exam or assessment. However, all the schools I've looked at or have been to always tell you to not trust their timetable 100% and instead go off the timetable on the AQA or like Edexcel or OCR websites. So you go through all this process of them giving you a timetable and then you're not told to trust it, and this is just in case like the schools get it wrong. And yeah, for many qualifications, there will not be another opportunity to sit the exam until the next year. So if you miss an exam, you won't receive any marks from it, so don't miss it. And your exams are cancelled. Your teachers, if I've had a conversation with your teachers about you wanting to keep a test, they likely would have told you no, or they would have given you a photocopy of it. This is because the school keeps records of how well you are doing in exams and your tests, just in case your exams get cancelled. For example, like what happened with COVID, exams were cancelled, so it was based off performances in your actual lessons and tests going up to it, your performance in your mocks, and your predicted grades. Yeah, and it's just reiterating what I said in a longer way. For private candidates, you may want the school or college to assess you during the academic year, just in case it does get cancelled. Because obviously, if you're a private candidate, you're not going to have a predicted grade, or you're not really going to have a history of like assessments, so you won't be able to like get a grade if the national exams cannot take place. So like if you're a private candidate when COVID was happening, you just couldn't do anything and you just had to wait later. And then it goes on between foundation and higher, just talking about the differences between them and the subjects that happen. and I did not know statistics had a foundation tier, and I study statistics at uni. I probably should know that, but it's just talking about the difference between them. Your school or college decides whether to enter you for foundation or higher. If you're borderline, quite often they'll give you a choice, and if you're private, you get to choose. However, foundation tier is easier and has less content and goes from grades 1 to 5, which means there are only two passing grades in foundation tier of 4 and 5. And higher tier, students are awarded 4 till 9. And if you didn't get enough marks to get a grade, like if you got below a 1 in foundation, you'd get a U. And if you get below a 4 in foundation, you get a U as well. So foundation is easier, but like it's also a lot easier to get an ungraded in higher because you have to get a 4, which you will only have to get a 1 in foundation to not get an ungraded. And then it gives you support material. Talking about support material, we get for maths, physics, and combined science, you get a formula sheet. And this was temporary after COVID, but it seems to have been extended indefinitely. Well, I say indefinitely, 2025, 2026, and 2027. And they say usual formula. It's going to be like 6 or 7 years when this runs out. And even then, I expect them to extend it. So for the foreseeable future, you'll have formula and equation sheets, which is good. Access arrangements, once again, this will only apply to a specific group of people, one of which I was with my dyslexia. I got given 25% extra time. And there are two categories of access arrangements. Reasonable adjustments, which is in advance of an exam to reduce or remove a disadvantage. This could be, as I had, extra time. It could be having different color paper. It could be writing your exam out on a computer. And there's also special consideration, which happens after the fact. I also had this because the fire alarm went off in my extra time, and I had to sit for like 20 minutes doing my further maths A-level while the fire alarm was going off, and I probably got a couple of extra marks due to that. And while that may seem unfair, you sit the last fifth of your exam with a fire alarm blazing in the background for the entire thing. Enough ranting. Can I get help with exams and assistance if I'm a disabled student? Reasonable adjustments, extra time, changes to exam paper, like different colours, large print or braille. And this is what I didn't mention. Some people, you're allowed a scribe. So another person may read questions to you or write out the stuff that you say. And like the reasonable adjustments, they have to be reasonable. You're not just going to be gifted a bunch of extra marks, and they're always based on the needs of the individual. I had to pay, my family had to pay a bunch of money to get me a dyslexia assessment and stuff like that. And then most schools have someone who organizes it. If you think you're dyslexic or have ADHD or anything like that, talk to maybe just pop an email to your school's educational needs and disabilities coordinator, and they can tell you whether or not to apply. And it's just more about that. And anyway, let's go on to the next article. This was a fairly good one. No actual tips for exams, but it gives you all the information you need to be able to get help and actually know what style of exams you are sitting. Next up is the government's advice on coping with exam pressure, with this being specifically targeted at students, although I don't know many students who would go browsing on the government website for mental health support. But jumping straight in, there's a photo with a very sort of bland description that just explains it. And then it just describes what negative beliefs are, that are like how people are worried about failing and stuff like that. And then it talks about replacing negative beliefs with positive beliefs, which is actually, it may sound like a bit obvious, but it's actually a good belief. And talking about even though instead of saying I'm rubbish at maths, if you are struggling with maths, instead of focusing on that, you focus on the positive aspects, which are like your efforts. Even though I will never be the best at maths, I will do better because I have a revision plan and I'm a stick to it. And the key things to remember is that if you suffer from anxiety, replacing negative beliefs can help. Some people keep a record through a diary or a journal, and you can become more confident with a can-do attitude, which seems the first 2 points are rather good. The last one just seems a bit like happy-go-lucky is my best way to describe it. And then it begins to talk about planning revision, how you need to create plans, set targets, and check your progress. So, example of this, create times when you're going to revise, set target grades, like do you want to improve to this certain grade, and then check your progress, which is like usually a past paper. However, the government website doesn't really say this, so creating a plan, setting targets, and checking progress is a bit vague. But for most students, it is going to be setting time aside to revise, setting targets for what grades you're going to get, and then checking it with past papers. And like I feel like it would be a lot better if the government sort of outright said that, especially because for some reason they've sort of bumped it in with vocational qualifications, which means like it's not A-level or GCSE specific. And I get that lots of people are doing vocational things, but the majority of people in the country are doing GCSE and A-levels. And like even then, vocational people deserve advice tailor-made to them instead of how like just being bumped in with like the rest of the purely A-levels and GCSE things. And then they're talking about stages. Stage 1 is the target. Stage 2 is to revise it. Stage 3 is to test your revision. And stage 4 is to review your target. So basically, it's an endless cycle of setting targets, working towards those targets, testing those targets, and then setting new targets. And like, that's really good if you're one of those people who likes to keep track of your progress each day. Other than that, it's not really things. And then the key things to remember are targets should be achievable and manageable. Targets must be short-term and include a time limit. Review your targets. Important to test yourself. And they could have just mentioned SMART goals here. That's the thing, like, if you've ever done GCSE PE, you'll know what SMART goal is. Just talk about SMART goals. It's relatable, lots of students cover it. I also think you cover it in sociology or psychology or something like that. Lots of students know what SMART goals are. It's a very common thing that schools use. They often tell students to make sure their goals are SMART. But, like, they're just a bit missing the mark by making their advice too vague. And then they're talking about how stress isn't a bad thing. Stress is nothing to be scared of. Anxiety is not inevitable. You can learn how to cope more effectively. And then there's the signs of high exam anxiety, which I don't really think should be in a guide to set aimed towards students, because students are going to be so close to the issues that they can't even really see it. So, like, signs of high exam anxiety should really be in a guide for parents and teachers, so parents and teachers can notice it and then help. Because, like, even if you're going to know if you're anxious about exams. And then they're talking about cognitive signs, which are just thoughts, difficulty concentrating. Affective signs, which are emotions, like just how you feel. And then physical signs, sweating, heartbeat, jelly legs. And then most people experience some of these signs. High exam anxiety is specifically when you experience them most of the time, and you can learn how to control your physical reactions to anxiety. And like, another thing I don't like about this is like, even though high exam anxiety is when you experience them most of the times, they're still not good when you experience them a little. And by directly linking stress to anxiety and then saying anxiety is okay, you're going to make people think these don't need to be dealt with. Or like, obviously they don't need to be dealt with. Like, you're not less of a person if you suffer with these things. But like, by ignoring them, because quote unquote most people experience some of these signs, by ignoring them due to that, you're just going to sort of limit yourself. And then it gives deep breathing techniques, which are helpful. And then that's the end of that article. So now on to the next article. Well, I say article, it's a series of videos about cheating, which you don't do. I'm just, at first I thought it was a cookie issue, so it's like I wouldn't be able to click on links. All the videos are private. The government, this is the only advice on how to be exam smart, on how to be like prepared for your exams, and like how not to cheat. This is like one of the major only sources of stuff towards the exams. And then there's also stuff aimed at parents and carers. And like, Okay, the school stuff's still there. The government has removed it all. The government has it's all gone. So I can't even talk about this government advice because the government no longer has it. So be exam smart. I can't. You're not helping me be exam smart. And like, if students are worried about cheating, this is one of the first things that comes up. Besides the official JCQ qualifications, which are wordy and doesn't make much sense. So some actual videos on this would be helpful. Would actually be helpful, and they've removed them all. Why did they remove them? I don't know. On to the next stuff. Anyways, a bit annoyed about that. Went to all the effort to make my absolutely hilarious thumbnail, just for it not to even be true. The government's okay with you cheating on your exams. Go for it. Anyway, what do you do if you think there's a mistake in your results? Firstly, how do I request a review of my results? If you think there's been a mistake in your exam or assessments, you should talk to your school or college. They can ask the awarding organisation to check if there are any errors. Most awarding organisations do not accept requests directly from students, with schools and colleges having to actually give that thing. However, quite often it costs 50 quid, which means for most students you're going to have to rely on your parents and actually be able to see how close you are to the grade boundaries. I wouldn't recommend doing it unless you're only a couple marks away from the grade boundaries, or if, as it says here, you request to see your marked assessment or exam and then there's something really wrong with it, then I would recommend it. If you're a private candidate, you can ask the awarding organisation directly, or you can ask the college or school where you took your exam. And if your college or school asks for a review of the marking and the awarding organisations do not find any mistakes, your mark will not change, so your grade will not change. Although, if your grade goes up, doesn't say it here, if your grade goes up, you usually get a refund for how much. So if you're 100% certain it's going to go up, then you'll get your 50-ish quid back. Only around 20% of students accepted into university meet or exceed the grades they were predicted, which is a really stupid prediction. It should be, I'm going to put a graph up here, so I'm just saying it in the video now, so I actually put a graph up here when I'm forced to. Normal distribution, predicted grades in the middle, then equal either side. So, it should be 33% meet it, 33% get higher, 33% get lower. Predicted grades don't mean anything anymore. Most schools, some schools just allow you to ask for higher ones, and it's complete nonsense. This isn't the point. It's just more general information about the reviews and how the exam board goes through it. Different awarding organisations have different deadlines for when you can do it. Aim to complete priority reviews by the 3rd of September, which is UCAS's deadline to hold places open for students. So for A-levels, if you need to get it redone, it will be done by the 3rd of September, so your university doesn't kick you out for getting too low a grade. Can you appeal? Yes, you can still appeal. However, I wouldn't recommend it if you've already appealed once and you've already had your marks reviewed, unless you know there's something wrong, you've had a look at the marked copy and they did get it wrong, there's no really a point. Wouldn't recommend it. If you still have concerns, you can get into contact with the Exams Procedures Review Service, and this can only be done after you've gone through all the appeal stages of the exam board. Quite often it's not worth it, but it's kind of sad that it's not worth it because they're sort of forcing you to do it. So honestly, more pressure needs to be put on them to make it easier to appeal and stuff, if there's a whole board necessary to supervise them. When can you sit your exams? For GCSE English Language and Maths, you can do it in November, but only for students who are 16 or over. So the November ones can only really be done as resits. And for non-English languages and GCSE mathematics, such as all the other GCSEs, AS, A-level, they'll need to wait until next year and need to resit the entire all their exams. However, students can choose to carry forward their non-exam assessments. and some vocational courses have assessments throughout the years, so it doesn't really matter for you guys. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Really interesting to see what the government's official advice is for exams. It's actually rather interesting. Bit annoyed they removed all the videos though. Like, if a guide is to students about how not to cheat, and then there's nothing in the guide that actually covers it, students are just going to cheat. I bet at least a few students have cheated accidentally, because of like different rules about like watches, water bottles. At least a few students have probably cheated accidentally because they've looked for those resources and they've just been removed with no explanation. And gov.uk is still linking to apparently videos which are private, which you can't even see. That's not the point. I'm unreasonably mad about this. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time, where